Hi again, welcome to NextGen Hub. My name is Luke, and our passion here is to make sure that we empower, equip, and encourage you, the next gen leader. Now, when you think of the words intergenerational ministry, what sort of things come into your mind? I wonder.
And I'd have done it too, if you kids hadn't have come along. And I'd have found it if it wasn't for you snoopers.
You blasted kids! Why didn't you mind your own business? Yes, and I'd have gotten away with it too. If it wasn't for these blasted kids and their dogs.
Okay, maybe that was a little bit extreme. But I want to know, do you class yourself as an intergenerational church? What does it even mean? And if you do want to get to that point, how do you do it? Now, hopefully in this video, we help unpack some of those strategies and tools for you to really take that next step into intergenerational ministry. Now, if I was to ask you, are kids and youth actually serving in your church? And I mean really serving. And you might think, yeah, they are. You know, we help them do the car park for events. We ask them to take out the rubbish. We ask them to mop up the floors. And that stuff is actually okay. But I want to take it one step further in this video. Now, the thing is, as church leaders, we can often default into getting our young people, which is our kids, our youth, our young adults, to help with some menial tasks, whether again it's mopping the floor or taking the rubbish out. But the message we're sending our kids is, you only matter when we want stuff out of you, stuff that no one else really wants to do. And that might be okay in the short term, but in the long term, the kids will get the idea that we only belong when you want us to, and that's not good. And this is why intergenerational ministry is so important. What it does is it brings all the generations together, not only in proximity, but in how we do church together. And that is really the key of an effective intergenerational ministry. Now, intergenerational ministry celebrates the reality that we all belong to the body of Christ. See, in 1 Corinthians 12, Paul talks about this at great length, that everyone has their particular gifts and their skills and abilities, all to serve the church. So it makes no sense to silo and segregate the young people from the rest of the church. And even Jesus says in Matthew 19:14, he says, "Let the little children come to me, and do not hinder them, for the kingdom of heaven belongs to such as these." So if it's important for Jesus to say that our young people belong in the body of Christ, we need to bring them back in. See, intergenerational ministry isn't just what we do, but it's also about what we become and who we are. And if we get this right, it becomes a cultural norm and everyone truly wins. Now, there's heaps of research that actually is going into this stuff to show us the importance of young people not just serving, but being part of the wider church body. Now, the Fuller Youth Institute, driven by Cara Powell, has some great information on this. In her book Sticky Faith with Chap Clark, and Growing Young, which is one of their new ones. Churches are growing old, but how can we help them grow young? And the reality is that we do this by inviting them to the table and saying, you know what? You're more than just mopping a kitchen. You're more than just putting bins out or manning the car park. You matter to the body of Christ, and we want to invite you back in. And the research is even amazingly showing that those churches that invite young people into the decision making, into the operations of the church, these churches are ones that are not just retaining young people, but they are also seeing young people disciple other kids. So you might think, Luke, this is great, but how do we become intergenerational? Where do we start? Well, I've got 3 really quick tips that can help you start to become intergenerational. The first one is go for the low-hanging fruit. And what I mean by this is, where is intergenerational ministry already happening organically? Just look around. Where can you see old and young getting together in a very natural way? Could even be a grandfather and a grandson. I would say get to those people and ask them, what are you doing and how can you inspire others? One thing I've done in the past is I've actually gotten an intergenerational pioneer team. And what this is I've actually approached people, old, young, middle-aged, and shared the vision about how we want to see this come to fruition. So we got them around the table and we started putting our heads together, we started putting vision together, and we started to strategize. And that's how you do it. Bring people along with you, start small, and look for the low-hanging fruit and start picking. You might be looking around at your church thinking, there's nothing at all that even resembles intergenerational ministry. What I would recommend would be to put a program name around it first. Use an acronym, because that's what your church does. But what I really want to encourage you to do is put something around that. Now, I'm not about program. I think programs are okay and they have their place. But if your church is naturally geared towards putting programs around things, do that at first. Do it until it becomes part of the culture, and then slowly phase the program out in lieu of this new cultural norm. So put a program around it first if that's what you want to do. Pitch to the church. If that works, fantastic, you're well on your way. Now, I've joined a church before where this wasn't even considered as a viable option. So again, we put a program around it. And we made sure we had things like prayer partners. So we had an older person praying for a younger person and vice versa. We had sports and activity days where would have oldies versus youngies, young families versus young adults. And it was a really, really cool thing to see. So if that's really what you want to do, go for it. And the last one would be to be serving together. Now, I've done this before in the past where I've actually got key people in the church, whether it's people who are in charge of the kitchen duties, whether it's people who are in charge of the cleaning up, whatever it is. Get these older people trained into how to disciple young people. So while they are serving together, there's actually an organic mentoring happening in the process. So try and figure out how can we get older people to be serving with younger people and mentoring them at the same time. That's exactly where we want it to be. Thirdly, I would say it's really important to champion and celebrate. Now, I've been a part of a church, as I said before, where this wasn't even considered as anything that we should be doing as a church. So the way that we championed it was we would have preaching sermons about it, we would tell stories, we'd have video stories, we'd have interviews on stage from an older person and a younger person talking about how amazing this is. We would match mentors to young people. The fact is, we would have to really work hard at making this a bit of a norm. And it takes a lot of tough conversations, it takes a lot of pushback, but I can promise you it is worth it, because those kids who are serving and who are involved in church, they not just stay in church, but they stay in their faith. And that is exactly what the church was designed to do. There's this very outdated sort of thinking around youth ministry, and even kids ministry as well, that the youth ministry is like an appendage to the body of Christ. Yeah, it's somewhat important, but it's still developing. So let's develop it somewhere else apart from the rest of the body. That's not biblical at all. I want to encourage you to know that young people are actually the lungs in the body. They bring life, they bring passion into the church. So it would make no sense, because when you remove lungs, you remove oxygen and you remove life. So let's bring young people back into the church. See, intergenerational ministry is so important because it shows the young people what the church body should look like and how they should interact and how they serve together regardless of age. Because as I said earlier, the research is showing that if you remove those young people from the body of Christ, when they hit university or college age, the chances are they will probably walk away from the faith. And we don't want to see that happen. So it's about putting the hard yards in now. It's about being intentional and making investment while they are still part of your church. So if I was to ask you, on a scale from 1 to 10, 10 being ultra, 1 being not at all, how intergenerational is your church? I've been up the end of both scales. It's really different. But I would say strive to get closer to number 10, because that's where we're going to see the most fruit. So have a chat with your senior pastor, have a chat with your diaconate or your council or your board or whatever you call it, and really start pointing this stuff out. Because if you look at the research, sure, in the short term, kids will be around, but in the long term, they're going to fall away. So as a church, we have a responsibility to make sure that our young kids are staying in their faith and they're growing. So that's intergenerational ministry. That's a great thing to think about. We've only just really briefly touched on it. Do some more reading, and let's start the conversation as well. Shoot me a message. Make sure you subscribe and like and do all the social media stuff. But let's make sure we keep on talking about this, because I'm really passionate about that. So guys, we'll see you next week. I'm not sure what we're going to talk about. Send me a message if you want me to talk about something in particular. But otherwise, have an amazing week, and we'll see you next time. God bless.